Hi everybody, this is the second presentation on psychoanalytical, so one of the approaches to personality. So the first one I did was traits and types. So if you haven't already, just jump on my webpage, which is www.inspiretomotivate.com, subscribe and you'll have access to all the resources there. So the first presentation is just a PowerPoint with me talking to it, so you can pause at any time when you get sick of my voice. But what I'd like to do is do the presentation in depth and then just do a quick little video session just to capture some of those little, summarize, I guess, some of those points. So hopefully you've looked at traits and you realize that we all have a lot of those traits about us, and you probably realize now there are a certain group of people that get placed into types because they have those similar traits. But doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot have all those other traits that maybe other birds have. Like obviously I've just got the owl there and the peacock as well, only because they're usually the two birds that sit on my shoulder and tell me how things go. But what we're going to talk about is psychoanalytical. Now, many therapists either love this man or hate this man, but it's funny, even today we still talk about him, and a lot of his techniques are still used in therapy. Whatever therapist you are, you still may use his techniques, and you may not even know that you do use them. How's that an unconscious thing? All right. So I'm talking about Sigmund Freud. So what I want people to do is keep an open mind. I find him fascinating, and when I did my psych degree, it was quite clear that a lot of people, as in lecturers, were very much about CBT, about behaviourists. If you want to get anywhere, Renee, you're going to have to do CBT. And I get it, and that's probably why I liked ACT therapy, acceptance commitment, because it still sits under the CBT umbrella, because it's tested and you can see results. So, but when we look at psychoanalytical, it's like, ooh, it's the mind. And we really don't know a lot about the mind. We're getting there, we're learning, but there's still a lot to be learned. However, saying that, he has come up with so many things that I think are quite interesting in themselves. So when I talk about Mr. Freud, we're looking at that year between 1856 to 1939. It's like a century ago. Oh my God, women were playing music and working and dancing. Guys were wearing shorts and drinking beer in the street. No, they weren't. Look at the context of what was happening. So he was a doctor, so a GP, a general practitioner, very interested in the neuroscience, and hence why a lot of his work came about through looking at the mind. And he believes our personality is formed pretty much by five. And in that way, he's looking within in our brain, and also looking at certain the ego and the superego and the ego, and you've probably heard those things thrown around. So I'm going to really sort of talk about them and put them all together quite quickly. If you want to get more information on that, check out that presentation I've done. So there we go, the mind. How do you measure the mind? How do you measure the unconscious mind? There are still so many theories out there that believe that, well, can we? Or like, it's bizarre, it's strange. It is an interesting thing, and lots of research suggests otherwise. But I'm going to talk to you about his theories, and I think a lot of them are quite relevant to today as well. So he talks about the conscious, the pre-conscious and unconscious. Now, what I've done there, you see this big circle here, which I drew later because I thought I was recording, but it wasn't. It's like the iceberg effect. So what people see and what people don't see. So within us, he believes that we have these three levels, which is true, we do. We have a conscious mind. Now, the conscious mind is the things we do and say that we actually know about in the present. They're in that moment and we're aware of them. So it's about our awareness. So still a lot to be, investigating that area. Then we have our pre-conscious. So they're things that we've stored away. So maybe memories and feelings, and we've just popped them away. But if something like a trigger, like if you were listening to some 80s music and it makes you reminisce about a time back when you were a kid and you have that memory, you brought that back into your awareness. So you're now aware of it. So that's a good way to look at the pre-conscious, and then you put it away. Hopefully with all my information, you bring it to the conscious and you're aware of it, and maybe you might store it and put it into long-term memory. As for these days, how do we retain things, right? Because you can just Google stuff now. Do I need to retain it is the question, because there's so much information out there. Then our last but not least is our unconscious. So this is the thing that drives us, that keeps us alive. They're the things that we don't even know about or we're aware of. So in particular, you know, your heart's beating, your blood's pumping around, all the cells are making new cells, and glucose and nitrogen and nutrients is what I want to say, are all happening that we don't know about. So they're not in our awareness, but we know that happens because we're alive today. Yeah. So he also believes that this is where our personality sort of is. You know, it's that whole, you know, what drives us. And he believed that we have a psychic energy that turns into behavior. So this is where people will go, oh my God, you know, he has some strange ideas, because he talks about libido. So our sexual drives, that we're all just driven by sex because we're like these sexual human beings, which we are sexual human beings. You know, we usually find a partner, and most of us usually have children, and have some more children and so on. But he makes it, this is where people get a bit funny, goes, oh, he makes it seem like they're just like these urges of human nature is just so sexual and aggressive, and, you know, and that's what he sort of believed. And Carl Jung, who most of you would know some of his work with, like Myers-Briggs, is that he believed some of, you know, fraudulent's, you know, beliefs, like that's, he was with him at that one point, you know, he certainly believed in the conscious and unconscious, but he also believed that we're not just fixated and stop where we're at, you know, where that's what Mr. Freud believed, that that's it. Things that happen to you in your childhood, bang, that's who you are. He actually believed there's potential to trauma happen to you, but you can grow and develop. And I really believe in that too. So he didn't really wipe the whole human, you know, human beings off as really sex fiends or something, which sometimes you read his stuff thinking, whoa, did he have some money issues or what? You know, like, God, scary stuff. But certainly some of his techniques are still used today, as I said. So when we talk about these drives, he certainly believed that we have these instincts and these urges. So these urges that make us do these things, but then we don't do them because we have what's called our, I'll move over there, oh, that's funny, isn't it? I'm laughing. Don't laugh at my little pictures. You know, I'm not an artist, but I'm drawing the picture of self, because remember, we're doing this as part of a program about self-development, self-awareness, that we need to be exposed to everything that's out there, and that includes psychoanalytical stuff. So when we look at self, he classes our three bits into ego, and superego. So obviously the drivers, the things that make us want to do things, is the ego. So look at it as like the devil on your shoulder is another metaphor, and look, and that's a psychoanalytical thing as well, as they use a lot of metaphors because we can remember them easy and bring them to the conscious mind. So think of the little devil sitting there going, hey, you should do this because that's what you want to do, and, you know, like, you know, you should just do it. But it does happen, like, and it's good stuff as well, you know, like, and I'll give you an example in a minute. And then we have the ego, that's like who we are here and now. You know, so this is what you see, this is my behavior, this is what you observe, because that's what you see, right? It's a bit like traits. You observe those things. Doesn't mean that's necessarily what I'm all about. There's a lot more to me than just that. And that's, I guess, what he's getting at as well. But, you know, just has this darker side about the ego's all about this. Then we have our super ego. So our super ego is like the angel that sits there on the shoulder saying, well, this is the way society is and we should act in this way. So it's sort of like your conscience, you know, like, you know, it makes you think ahead of the consequence. You know, instead of going to hit someone, it made me think, maybe you should just talk about it. Maybe you should just sit down. You know, that's a little good one that makes you do that. So a really good example is in a work meeting. So you need to go to the toilet, right? And that's an urge. That's something that's innate in you. You didn't have any control over. You didn't think to yourself, my God, I need to go to the toilet, I need to go to the toilet. You just need to go to the toilet. And it was brought into your conscious awareness, so you went, oh, I've got to go. But your super ego is going to go, but this is a really important meeting and you need to stay here and you shouldn't go at all. You should stay here. But then the ego part is going, yeah, but if I stay here, I might wet my pants or whatever. And, you know, if you're a woman in the 40s, it's important to go to the toilet, right? So the ego's got this whole, like, fight. You know, you can understand this inner conflict happening where it needs to go. So can you understand that's how it works? So what happens is it's a constant battle. And most of the time, it's not that bad because it happens all the time. You know, like, You've got to go to the toilet. Okay, you go to the toilet. It's only when the superego says, oh, it's a good time to do it now. It comes into play. If you want to know more and more about that, I've got some really good stuff that I've put on the presentation, just a couple more examples as well. But that's pretty much how it is. So once this conflict is occurring, so he believes that our personality is like probably just like trying to get out there, and he believes a lot of this stuff is set in us by 5. It's like, whoa, really? And this is where the psychosexual development steps in, right? So I'm not going to go in too much into that, because I think if you want to explore that a bit more, please check out my presentation, because I can't really do that in 5 minutes. But what I can do is talk about these inner conflicts that occur, is that what actually starts to happen is we develop these defense mechanisms. So there are lots of them. And believe it or not, Mr. Freud's daughter actually went on to be a psychologist as well, Anna, and she also came up with quite a few of these defense mechanisms. I find them fascinating because I've always been interested in why conflict occurs, and this is probably why I do a lot of this, these sessions, because I want people to have not only a greater understanding of themselves, but also a great understanding of others. Because remember, it's not all about what you see. There's a lot of other stuff going on. Our values, our belief system, and a lot of that stuff's probably in our unconscious mind, that we developed at such an early age. And I do believe that as kids, certain stuff can happen to us at those crucial moments of development that can impact us on adults. And that's why when he talks about how adults can get fixated. So if you look at my presentation, you'll see I talk about the stages. There are those 5 stages of development. So, I wasn't going to mention them, was I? But, obviously now I have the oral, the anal, the phallic, the lacency, and also the genital. I had to remember then. That was pretty damn good off my head. So those ones, if we successfully get through each of those stages, then we turn out to be reasonable human beings. Woo! I hope so. But if we have issues down the track, like if we get fixated in the oral stage, we could be smokers or suck our thumbs. And then for us to deal with that, so when we have this conflict going on with our 3 little ego things here, we might actually go to something like a defense mechanism of regression, where we might regress back to that point and might start sucking our thumb or having a smoke or putting something in our mouth, because, and that's where that whole psychoanalytical stuff came in. It's like, oh, so what happened for you then at that age? Let's explore that. And look, to psychoanalyze someone, I had to take my while to say that, it is a long time, because they really believe in that, transcendent and all that sort of stuff, of projecting, to be quite a neutral person, like a blank slate. And how can we be a blank slate? Probably the first time we come out when we're like 0, but then things happen to us, just life. We grow, we develop interactions, things like that, how our mind develops and interacts and perceives things as well. So we all know that we can all be within this a family structure and have siblings and same DNA and same environment, where you think same environment, but something happens to one of the siblings, like an event might happen to all of us, like divorce, but all of us perceive it differently and deal with it differently. So it's quite powerful stuff, but to some people that might have been quite an impact for them when they were a child, and that may then have come through later on as an adult. So that's why I find psychoanalytical stuff quite fascinating. As I said, a lot of those techniques are still used. There's a lot more modernized now, like more of the people, as we go through the time, of becoming quite, up to date and current, but we still talk about him because he is quite interesting. So listen to my presentation. It goes more into about the defense mechanisms. So the defense mechanism is, I was off track before, but, so if you come into a lecture hall and, you've got this lecturer and you hate him, you can't stand him, he's just an arse or something's happened, and you're sitting to yourself going, I don't even know this guy, what is going on? And your super ego is going, you're in a classroom, you should behave and you should do the right thing. And so your ego's there going, yeah, I know that. But then your eg's going, he really reminds you of someone, doesn't he? You really just want to hurt that person. So this is where, I know that might sound really dark, but I'm just saying that this is a moment where, this inner conflict happens, because you don't know why you have these feelings that come rushing to you where the Freud would believe more that something in the ego, the driver, maybe something's happened in that time, and it could be during the stage of development where you might have hated your dad, or you haven't successfully when sort of he believes like haven't gone through that particular stage successfully, that might come back, and so you might regress. Or some people can be in denial, like that didn't happen, or they can have an incident and then when they get home they might so take it out on a family member. So they're interesting. As I say, take them a bit of grain and salt, because sometimes I believe that we can have our own behaviors that we see in others that we might not necessarily like, but we actually have them ourselves. So that's another thing altogether as well. So on that note, that was the psychoanalytical, very quick little session on it. The presentation's like 40 minutes. I do apologise. I'm trying to make them shorter, but I just can't. They're just hard. And you have the moment, you can just pause them. So that is psychoanalytical. The next one we're going to do is behaviourist. So most people are probably familiar with some of those people behind behaviourists, Pavlov's dogs. The dogs, ring a bell and the dog drills, and then there's food, reward, conditioning. Very easy to measure those things. This is probably why that is what most therapists will use. So we'll talk a bit more about that. So have a good day, guys. Bye.